Hello, Tel Aviv. Feels amazing to be here, and I'm so thrilled to be here and to see all of you. My guest today, Natan Sharansky, was born in Donetsk, Ukraine, then called Stalino, in 1948, the same year as the birth of the State of Israel. A chess prodigy and a mathematician, he became a figure of international importance in 1977 when he was imprisoned by the Soviet Union on trumped-up charges of treason. His real crime was wanting to immigrate to the State of Israel. At his court hearing in 1978, he famously said, "To the court, I have nothing to say. To my wife and to my people, I say, next year in Jerusalem." Getting to Jerusalem took him longer than a year. Sharansky had to spend 9 years in the gulag, often in solitary confinement. In 1983, he was in a tiny cell in a prison near the Siberian border when he learned that President Reagan had labeled the Soviet Union an evil empire. That empire fell 8 years later, in no small part thanks to the actions of Sharansky, who immigrated to Israel upon his release from prison in 1986 and reunited with his wife Avital, an activist who stared down presidents and prime ministers in order to free him and all refuseniks. Natan, of course, went on to a long political career, serving as a cabinet minister in every Israeli government from 1996 to 2005. He's the author of several books, including the must-read memoir, Fear No Evil, and most recently, Never Alone, Prison, Politics, and My People. In the course of his remarkable life, Natan has been a key actor in the only true forever war, and that is the war of liberty versus tyranny. And while many American Jews have had the luxury over the past half century of feeling as though history had ended or that they had been on a holiday from it, Sharansky has always lived inside Jewish history. He is, as my friends at Tablet magazine recently put it, a living monument to 20th century Jewish heroism. Right now in the 21st century, as events speed up in ways that make the coming months and years profoundly uncertain, I can think of few people better to illuminate the way, not just for Jews and not just for Israelis, but for anyone who cares about the cause of freedom than Natan Sharansky.
Okay, you spoke so much about me, so I want to say 2 words about you. I wanted to say that you are my hero from my childhood, but you were born too late for this, yeah? But you really became my hero when you resigned from New York Times. Not only because I love to resign, yeah. You know, I resigned twice from Israeli governments, and I never resigned in prison, but the most difficult moment in my life was not when I was accused of high treason, not when they were saying that they'll kill me, not solitary confinement, not punishing cell. The most difficult one when I had to start this process of applying for Aliyah, and in Soviet Union it was that you have to inform your boss in your office that you're applying for Aliyah. It was so frightening because it means that all this life, all this career is finished and nobody knows what will happen to you. So I thought something like this you did when you applied to resign from New York Times. That all the dream of everybody, what young journalists can dream about, to work in New York Times. And here you are resigning, and in 2 pages you're explaining how this center of intellectual life in America became the center of anti-intellectual life. And not only you resigned, you created common sense and the free press. So if somebody from you, as those who didn't cancel your subscription for New York Times. I didn't subscribe for Bari Weiss, so better do it. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I've been in Israel for about 24 hours. I landed at the airport yesterday at 7 a.m. and I went straight to the south. I went straight to see the kibbutzim. I went to Nova. I spoke to people that survived and heard the stories of the way that people were murdered in the most horrific ways imaginable. And if there was a theme to every conversation I had, whether it was with the Bedouin kid, really, who helped save people's lives, who I met at the gas station, or the girls who somehow managed to survive the bullets, the theme was change. It was that everyone I spoke to said, I was one person on October 6th, and I'm another person on October 7th. And that's the theme of what I really want to talk to you about tonight, the changes that Israel is in the midst of, both personally in every single person that lives in this country, but also ideologically, politically, and even spiritually. So I wanted to start by asking you, how has October 7th changed you, if it has, maybe politically and maybe as your family? I'd love for you to reflect on that a little.
Well, no doubt that our society, which unfortunately was more and more polarized, and last year was the worst. It seemed like half a country believed that the other half of the country is stealing from them freedom or Judaism. It depends on what side. And then in one day, it became the most united country. And people suddenly feel that it's all nonsense, what we were talking only a few days ago, that for the first time I live in our society, which of course I loved in all the stages, but for the first time, the world, left or right, is not a curse. You live in a society where there is no hatred to Haredim. There is no disgust to Hilonim. So it's all the societies in one tank, and they are family together. So that's about Israel, and I only hope that these young people who I love to see in these days will keep this feeling when they come back and will become politicians as soon as possible. Yeah. Now, on the personal level, look, my daughter was complaining, and she's writing, those who don't read her blogs in Jerusalem, in Times of Israel, you better read. So she's complaining all the time that we took all the challenges of the past, that the Israel is built, Zionism is built, she grew in the stories of the struggle for Soviet Jewry, Soviet Union doesn't exist, and how we can make our life meaningful. In one day really, suddenly you understand you cannot take Israel for granted. You have to fight for this and build it as it was done by the first Zionists. Well, you understand that if your enemies say that they want to kill you, you'll better believe them. And suddenly, people of Israel and you personally are back inside history, inside our story, and that there, you see it, this young generation that we were so critical, so skeptical. They don't know anything. They go for inspiration to Thailand. And yeah, well, and suddenly we see how high is their spirit, what it took me years to understand that survival is not the most important thing, that there are things much more important. Suddenly we see how what they're writing, what they're saying, we didn't realize, or we forgot how much strength we have, and that's very encouraging. That's difficult times, tragic times. We all have tragedies inside our families, but it's really times of big optimism for all of us.
Let's talk about some of the conceptual changes that have taken place in the past more than 110 days. Before October 7th, the consensus that Israel had about itself, I think, and that certainly people on the outside had about it, was military powerhouse, startup nation, one of the most technologically sophisticated countries in the world. And yet here it was overtaken by terrorists in trucks, on hand gliders, on motorcycles, and by foot. What did Israel get wrong about itself?
Well, no doubt that there were some failures. We are a startup nation, we are high-tech, and nevertheless, this belief that now we need less soldiers on the ground and more more intelligence from there, and we found out that we need both. And there were some specific mistakes did by our politicians, our intelligence, our army. I think it will all be taken care of. But there are some conceptual problems which finally came on the surface. I believe, it's my personal opinion, it's all started from Oslo. It all started from this idea, and by the way, I wrote my first article against Oslo 10 days after it happened. I became against because both of our leaders then, they said how good it is that Arafat is a dictator, because he will take care of Hamas much easier than we can do it. So the idea of Oslo, people think it's New Middle East, the idea of Oslo was that we are bringing dictator. We say to Palestinians, you want or not, he will be our dictator. In order to make sure that he will be our dictator, we paid from public money of Palestinians, we paid on his personal account $30 million every month. Now we are speaking about the money of Qatar. This idea that if you pay and you'll have a strong dictator to rule for us, we'll do a peace. Then, of course, not only he didn't take care of Hamas, but Hamas took care of him. And as I was writing, dictator needs enemies, and he needs it for his own power as the enemy. So he will make sure that young generation will hate us more. And then with Hamas, of course, we couldn't think about Hamas that they'll be our dictator. But continuing this policy, we decided it's not our business what's happening there. We'll build the wall, and that's when I left the government to Ariel Sharon. And we will fight with them, we'll give them strong blows, and we'll pay them. And this stick and carrot, that what, of course, they're all speaking about our destruction, but in the end, this concept fell, absolutely. I do hope that we will make serious conclusions. I don't know, because I had so many disappointments when I was speaking about human rights, democracy as a way to build peace. The left and the right don't believe in it. They don't believe that it has anything to do with peace. We have to find somebody stable, to give him money, to be very strong that he will be afraid, and that's all. It fell. I hope we got a very difficult lesson. But no doubt, we are a startup nation. We are very strong spiritually. Just now we were speaking about what a great young generation we have. Our politicians have to abandon this concept of trying to make deals with those who want to kill you.
I think one of the interesting things you point out that will be surprising to an American audience is that it's not a Bibi thing or a right-wing thing. It's that Rabin empowered Arafat because, as he famously or infamously put it, depending on where you sit, Arafat can control Hamas because he doesn't have to deal with the Israeli Supreme Court or B'Tselem, the human rights organization. And now you have Bibi doing the same thing via Qatar and Hamas. Now, the whole time, through basically all of these governments, you were insisting on what you insist on now, that the only way to have ultimate peace with your neighbors is if they embrace democracy. And that was considered a utopian position, and their position was considered the realist position. Do you think you were actually the realist in the end?
All my, let's say, wisdom is coming from my experience with the Soviet Union. And from there, it's not that I believe that everybody wants to live in democracy and that's why there'll be peace. But everybody wants to live in freedom, meaning that the others will not tell me what to do. And so the moment you have the government, which depends on this desire of people, then that's some guarantee. Otherwise, the only guarantee is your army. And yeah, I was speaking about it when there was Oslo agreement, and I came with this idea that we will not reach any peace with the dictator. We have to think how to encourage some kind of civil society on the other side. Siberian, who was one of the architects, then told me, Natan, it's all very nice, but it will take 30 years. And we're making peace in 3-5 years. It will be new Middle East. It's exactly 30 years past. So now that I wrote an article in Wall Street Journal about it,
with Bassam Eid.
Yeah, with Bassam Eid, my Palestinian friend, a few weeks ago, and again came back to this, that whether we want or not, but there must be some entity which will take care of the education and of building a free economy and so on and so on. And I asked one of the people close to Washington, do you think somebody in the government will read it? Because after this I'm writing for them. He said, are you serious that somebody will think what will be 30 years from now? They'll think, what can we do in order to change the situation until the elections? And elections here, 1 year, there are 3 years, doesn't matter. But that is the problem. Now we are thinking, what will happen in the next year? We have to think what will happen with the next generation, how we can really reach some understanding. And without developing of civil society, nothing will happen.
Speaking of elections, I think according to a December poll, 70% of Israelis want Bibi to resign. He has a 15% approval rating right now. You used to have a close relationship with him. What is your relationship like with him right now? And do you think he should resign?
Well, frankly, I have almost no relations but his closest person to him is Ron Dermer, who is my friend and my co-author. But first of all, Bibi did great things for our people, and they are often underestimated. People don't know that in struggle for Soviet Jewry, who was diplomat in Washington, and he was one of the few, if not the only Israeli diplomat who was helping to my wife Avital behind the scenes without asking permission from Tel Aviv or from Jerusalem, what was very rare. And then, of course, what he did for Israeli economy, and then from the 90s, he was thinking and working against Iran and the leakage of technologies. And I think he sees it as his historic mission to protect Israel from Iran. On the other hand, as I told him once, 2 terms, that's what is the best for the leader. And when the leader is such a long period of time with the power, it's not good for the country, it's not good for him, it's not good for... and also the polarization of the society, he also played a role in this polarization. He has now to win this war and then to resign. But
do you actually think he'll resign?
Well, that's I don't know. I think he'll have to. Not only he, I think we need to generation change. I do hope that there's a lot of new blood will come now from the young generation with the experience in fighting. I think it is very important for him at this moment, and I know that he concentrates on it, how to win the war. Of course, we are all interested that he will succeed. And I think if he was asking my advice, I would advise him after the victory to resign.
One more question on Bibi. There are some voices that say that his motivation is not just winning the war, it's staying in power, and he wants to draw out the war in order that he stays in power. Too cynical, Arid?
I think it's nonsense. I think with all the criticism about Bibi's polarization too much in the power and so on, but he is patriot. He is Zionist who thinks in the historical terms, and that's what he got from his father, whom I knew and who gave him this historic feeling of the importance of Israel. I think he wants to win this war as quickly as possible, also because of personal reasons, but mainly because of Israel. So with all those who criticize Bibi, you have enough to criticize him for the real things. You should not invent these absurd accusations.
one of the things that you were prophetic about was you can't actually moderate a population through economic carrots in the way that Rabin thought he could under Arafat with the PLO, or the way that Bibi thought that he could under Hamas. That's one thing you were prophetic about. The other thing, arguably, that you were prophetic about was your position about the pullout from Gaza in 2005. The majority of Israelis at the time supported it. You opposed it. Not only did you oppose it, you resigned your position in Ariel Sharon's government over it. Now, post-October 7th, I think people are revisiting it. What did you see about the situation that would result from it that other people didn't?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that majority of Israelis were for this engagement. It's as the one who participated in demonstrations.
I think it was a little more than half.
Yeah, well, you know, Israelis, if said that now there is a real chance for peace, they'll go after this. And those who think that no, we are not ready for concessions, look what's happened with Oslo. It was like prepared behind the scene, behind the backs of the people. It was almost absolutely anti-democratic. But once people really believe that that is a chance to have a peace, they went after this, and the same with disengagement. In my last conversation, when I told to Ariel Sharon that I resigned, and he really wanted to convince me to stay. He didn't need my vote. He had majority, but he liked what I was doing on the campuses in America, and so we were very friendly. And he said, Natan, I want to explain you one thing, because I really want you to stay, understand one thing. The world is pressing us for major concessions. The Geneva Convention, it's only the question of time when they will impose on us next step of Geneva Convention. So, and what I want to do, I want to build this wall to say to all the world, you see what we are doing, we are giving, we are taking it's my blood, these settlements. We are taking all of them in order to separate us from all this. The world will accept it. If they will dare to make one shot, we will destroy their everything. And for the next 10 years, the world will be with us in it. And I told him, Arik, you don't have 10 years, you don't have 10 days. Well, I was wrong. He had 3 or 4 months of love of all the world. But of course, it's again this old idea that we must have the wall. It's not our business what is happening there. They can kill one another. It's not our business. And the world will be with us if they understand that there is a wall. I don't know to this day whether he was naive or he was pretending. I have to say, because I had such good relations with President Bush, he was really the best book agent of my book, Case of Democracy. So, yeah, his defending of this book immediately, in 1 hour, put it from 255 on Amazon to number 2 on Amazon. So,
what was number 1? Yeah,
well, I don't remember, but probably Clinton said something good about some other book. I don't know. But I wrote him a letter saying that I'm resigning, and that's because of the ideas that he loved so much in my book, and so on. So I simply felt that after so many candid conversations, I have to. And he wrote to me, Natan, I understand what you're writing about democracy and that the Palestinians are this and this, but I have to trust to General Sharon. That's how he said. And that's how it was sold, that he's general, he understands that what we can do and what we can't. And if he says to us that after this engagement, one shot from there and we'll destroy everything, that's how it will be. And unfortunately, that happened to be nonsense, and I didn't want to stay in the government one day after all the votes finished. I'm very sorry that ministers in the government who were much more right-wing to me, at least in their speeches to the government, they were much more to the right from me. They, many of them, voted with Ariel Sharon. And then we have what we have. Now we go back, and with in a very different station with new generation of Palestinians who hate us much more than before. We have to start thinking what will be 30 years from now and not what will be before Bibi resigns or after Bibi resigns, as if that is the central problem with our history. Yeah.
The idea that you just alluded to, that you could build a wall, and if they want to kill themselves on each other on the other side of it, torture each other, et cetera, it doesn't matter to us. You have always insisted on this idea of linkage, that the way a government treats its own population is directly connected to the way it will relate to you. And I wanted you to just reflect a little bit on that vis-a-vis the current government's understanding of Putin and Russia. You have been enormously outspoken about Putin, about Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, which next month is going to be in its second year. Meantime, the government has sort of, well, you'll articulate its attitude and why you think it's wrong.
Not sort of. I would say I am proud Zionist and proud Israeli almost all my life since I became Zionist. And I had to defend Israel in all types of audiences, in all types of hostile audiences. Like now they are accusing us what we are doing in Gaza and some other tough things. And I never had any problem to defend Israel. But the time when I'm really was embarrassed, in the last 2 years, especially the first year, when I had to explain why Israeli government is on the side of Putin. I have to say, when Zelensky told me, after 9 months or more, that as a Jew and Ukrainian leader, I don't find words. I don't know how to explain to my people that from all the free world, there are 2 countries which refuse to give us weapons, and that's Hungary and Israel. And that when we admire Israel so much, there are many things which can be said about modern relations, attitudes of the peoples of Ukraine and Israel. All the world, all the presidents, everybody came to Zelensky to express. I was the first public figure, and I'm not so public, I'm not the official position, the first one who met Zelensky in the 9th month of the war. Why? Because I spoke with all our leaders, with the president, with prime minister, with ministers, with members of defense. They didn't want to irritate Putin. And why? Because Putin is our important ally. We have strategic understanding that when we attack Syrian bases in Iran, Putin, whom unfortunately they say, it was not our desire, but the Western world accepted, Obama administration accepted that Putin will control the airspace, the skies of Syria. And so now we have to, not to get his permission, but at least that he will be neutral. Otherwise, we will not be able to attack the Syrian base. That was the logic. And that's everybody, every Israeli leader was telling me, and people in the street were saying me with anger, we heard you on the radio, if your son was in the airplane attacking Syrian bases, you will never say like this. But I was saying all the time, look, who is Putin? Putin is, by the way, he loves Jews. He's not anti-Semite, but he wants to rebuild Russian Empire. His main, he feels himself. That's in his blood, that he continues the work of Peter the Great, Ekaterina, and Stalin. Because of this, Iran and Syria will be always his allies. And and he's trying to change by fighting Ukraine, he changed all the rules in the free world. So all the free world is mobilized. You really think that in our conflict with Iran and with Syria, he will be on our side in the end? And now when, first of all, he and Iran became the closest partners, and it was a ridiculous stage, I was speaking about it, Washington and Kiev and in Jerusalem, that America is fighting Russia and is appeasing Iran, and we are fighting Iran and appeasing Russia. So that's exactly what's happening. So, and after all, we are allies. So not only that, of course, they became very close, Iran and Russia, and Iran is giving its weapons to Russia, and Russia is maybe even giving some very important strategic secrets, and definitely is giving their airplanes. Putin is by far the biggest the one who benefits from from our war is Hamas. He benefits big. He was the biggest criminal who was accused by all the free world in genocide. And now Israel is on the trial for genocide, and Russian judge is among those who are accused. So there's the twist, which he benefited. There are people who say that he planned it. I don't know, I don't have proofs, but definitely he gained a lot. And America was giving so much weapon to Ukraine, but as a result, he feels he can play on this, that Ukraine will get less. And Hamas, they're old allies. I remember for many years. So he was the first leader who embraced Hamas after what they did on themselves. And he had chutzpah to call to our prime minister to give a lecture about human rights, because what you're doing in Gaza. So
do you think that changes post 10/7?
Well, if our leaders will not change their attitude to Putin, after that they all have to resign immediately without waiting, because Putin is the one who is now in building closer and closer connections with Iran and with Hamas. And Hezbollah is shooting at us with cornets, which are produced in Russia. Putin was telling me many years ago, you'll see, well, he really had very good attitude, and he has, to Jews, and Israel for him was a Russian-speaking Jewish country, so he loved it. And
but he's collaborating with the people that
but he told me, you'll see what they're afraid of. It was 2000, I never met him after 2006. And he was telling me, you'll see that our weapon will never be used against Israel. And then immediately after that, there was second Lebanon war. I was still in the politics. And I myself saw these cornets who killed a lot of our soldiers, that are killing until this day. They produced, you can see this box, produced in Tula. Tula is military plant in Russia. Then you see airport Domodedovo, it's in Moscow. And then airport Damascus. And then they are bringing it from Hezbollah. So I hope that after this we will not feel that he's our ally, and we will understand that on which side we have to be in the war of Ukraine and Russia. I hope.
One of the things that has changed profoundly in the past 3 months is the orgy of anti-Semitism around the world. American Jews are feeling this really profound. I've never heard the kind of comments that I'm hearing. I've never felt like this before. Liberal Jews are getting guns. People are talking openly about their plans just in case. And this is America. Has the breadth and depth of it surprised you? And one of the things people are asking themselves is, what's the right historical analogy? Is it more a Soviet kind of anti-Semitism? Is it more a far-right, Nazi-ish kind of anti-Semitism? People are comparing it to the 1930s. Help us make sense of it. You're someone that's been watching this and talking about it for decades now.
Yeah. The fact that we go there, I was writing about it for the last 20 years, and in 2003 I told Ariel Sharon that by far the most important battlefield for the future of Jewish people are American campuses. And I wrote an article in Mariv, traveling to occupied territories, where occupied territories were American universities. So I saw this trend. Nevertheless, I also was shocked what good fighters for our cause we have. The 3 heads of American universities, what they did in half an hour,
was more effective than Hasbara for 20 years.
You know, I'm the chairman of Combat Anti-Semitism, a very important organization which tries to convince all the world to accept international definition and mobilizes mayors of this world. And I'm the chairman of ISGAP, Institute for Studying Anti-Semitism and Fighting in Academia, which just now published all these reports about Qatar money, and as a result, all these hearings. We never succeeded. We and 100 other Jewish organizations, we never succeeded in our warning where it goes, the way how these presidents of universities said. And I don't say that they are anti-Semites, by the way, but simply they went from this world of the campuses of these occupied territories by anti-Semites. And that's why it is very difficult for them now to say that genocide against Jews is bad. It doesn't depend from the context. Of course it depends, because they go on all these debates, they speak about microaggression, the students, and then go to demonstration, death to Jews. So it's part of this academical world in which I followed for the last 20 years. From the day that I got
So Claudine Gay is more effective than the entire Jewish agency.
Of course. I think we have to pay them not only salary, pension for this, because in 20 years of efforts, we never had such an effect. I was told that this clip was seen by 1 billion people in the world. Can you imagine? Even the free press will never have 1 billion. So,
yes, we will.
Bari, yes, okay. Now,
that's right.
Now it is really important to look for the causes. And for me, by the way, it's for the majority of those who came from the Soviet Union, and I know many Russian Jews who went to America. Unfortunately, I think everybody who, instead of going to Israel, went to America has made a big mistake. But they are, and many of them are my friends, and they see this woke movement as a neo-Marxism exactly as I see. They feel it. And Americans didn't feel. First, it started reminding me Soviet Union, when in 2002, 2003, I made my first tours in the universities. There was no BDS, there was the disinvestment movement. So let's stop investing in Israel, in the universities. And one Jewish woman in Harvard, business school of Harvard, postgraduate, said, you know, I wanted very much to sign this letter in support of Israel. But I know that 3 of my professors, who are most important for my career, will be very upset. And so I decided for a few years I'll be silent. Then, after my successful career, I'll start speaking. And I said, my God, it's not in Moscow University. I was born and lived in this double think. And it is Harvard Business School. And then I decided to check it. And I went to Columbia University and checked. And really, double think started entering American side. Today, double think is simply politically correct. That is the law of the life in America. And then the second, what started happening only in the last years, so-called woke movement, which the idea is that all the world is divided into oppressors and oppressed. And oppressor is always wrong, and the oppressed are always right. And we have to stop speaking about freedom of speech for oppressor, because that's what makes the life even more uncomfortable to oppress. And we have to make sure that oppressed will be those who are dictating the rules of life. And that's simply, if you'll take, instead of critical race theory, and call it class theory, you'll have Marxism, Leninism, word by word, on which we grew.
So wokeness is communism.
Yeah, wokeness, and that's why, by the way, it was so easy for us to understand, and I was speaking about it for years already, that the main war in America is not between Republicans and Democrats. The main war is between liberals and progressives. And that progressives, they are not liberals. That's like, it was so difficult for liberals in America to accept that people who are speaking about equality and justice against racism, they're not liberals. Because they want exactly like in the Soviet Union, the ideal was dictatorship of the proletariat against capitalists. Here is the idea that we have to give to oppressed, that black people, it's not like Martin Luther King who wanted to integrate them. Black people have to defeat this society. It has nothing to do with liberals.
Are you surprised, though, that this took hold in America? There's a quote from Solzhenitsyn that struck me as being so relevant to this conversation. It's 3 lines, I'm going to read it to you. Human nature is full of riddles, he said. One of those riddles is this: how is it that the people who have been crushed by the sheer weight of slavery and cast to the bottom of the pit, as you were, can nevertheless find strength in themselves to rise up and free themselves, first in spirit and then in body, while those who soar unhampered over the peaks of freedom, like Americans, suddenly lose the taste for it, lose the will to defend it, and hopelessly confused and lost, almost begin to crave slavery. How is it that young progressives, truly the most privileged people in the real sense of that word, in the world with their freedoms, why are they craving this new version, as you're saying, of communism, of slavery?
First of all, I'm very concerned with this. We go in Israel through very tragic times, but I'm very optimistic about Israel, very optimistic. Israel society. I'm very concerned by what's happening in America, because America for us, so dissidents, when we were in prison, that was like the only hope. But the American president says, Evil Empire, that was the best day on the gulag, because they are those who, because of whom we can succeed in the struggle. If America today will become like neo-Marxist state, there is no hope for freedom in the world. Why it is happening? Because also we saw it in the Soviet Union. People want to see these great words of the equality, that let's create the world where there are no oppressed people. And exactly there were some very good liberals who were ready to buy Stalin's propaganda in the days when Stalin was killing millions of people in the most awful ways, almost like here on the 7th. And there were some people like Fitwan, Bernard Shaw, they were ready to buy this nonsense because they wanted to believe in tikkun olam. And by the way, that's what makes it so difficult for left-wing liberal Jews to say that these people who believe in tikkun olam, they are against liberalism. The fact that it could so easily enter America, and this time not through some revolutionary opposition underground as in Russia, through academia. It went to neo-Marxism, which today is controlling more and more of America, came through academia, through postmodernism, through some really like Foucault and others, some interesting philosophers, and that it could go to social life. That's big, big danger for the future of America, and as a result, for the future of the world.
What do you think American Jews, just to stay on this for one more beat, should be doing about it, right? If Harvard is inculcating people in this, and yet American Jews believe that Harvard is the ticket to a good life, just stay quiet. I mean, that was in early 2000, that story. Yeah. Now imagine 20 years later, where people are openly praising Houthis in Yemen, let alone Hamas. I mean, it's unbelievable. What should the strategy be? Should the strategy be to divest ourselves from these places? Should our strategy be, as has been the policy basically of the organized Jewish community for the past 20, 30 years, try and reform it from within, or is reform not possible? Is it better for serious Jews to say, I'm not going to be a part of those institutions anymore? This is a really intense debate going on right now, and wonder what you thought.
Well, I understand that you were in shade of some alternative university. So, of course, you are interested that all these Harvard people will leave and go to your university. I'm for this. But it will not happen like this in one day. Right. Well, so I think Jews have to, well, first of all, it's so natural that Jews are the main victims of all this neo-Marxism, that who are oppressors. Oppressors are or white against black, or straight against gays, or men against women, or Israelis against Palestinians. That's the four lines of the modern woke movement. And so it's traditional antisemitism, which always makes Jews as the other. It is so easy to, in this black and white confrontation, to put Jews on the wrong side of history. As to Jews themselves, after all, there are only two basic desires which people have: to belong and to be free, identity and freedom. And Jews were so good in speaking about tikkun olam, and as a result, believing in human rights. In fact, the human rights were created by Jews. And so the thing that they have to understand, and that starts from the family and continues in Jewish schools, and it is not happening, is that we are for human rights. And these neo-Marxists, they are against, not only they are against Jews, they are against the world of human rights in which you believe. And they think that, well, the moment they get it, then they don't have this guilt feeling that they are betraying that liberal world, because that's such a big fear for them. We cannot betray liberal world. So they have to understand their liberal world, and this.
I was setting you up to say skip Harvard and make Aliyah, and you missed the opportunity.
Well, that's what I tell you, make Aliyah, yeah, of course. But oh yeah, well, but
I gotta talk to Nelly.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm on individual level, I'm fully for every Jew making Aliyah. But in practical terms, I understand that many of them will not make, at least the next year, before election, they will not make Aliyah. So I want those who are not making Aliyah will continue, it's very Jewish, to try to reach the highest levels in politics, in journalism, in the universities. But there, remember that what we are giving, what we Jews are proudly giving to the world, is liberalism and human rights and equality, and not neo-Marxism. So stop cooperating with these anti-Jewish theories. That's what I would say. But yes, if they can leave Harvard and go to your university, I'm fully for this. And then to Aliyah, let's make it.
Like Bush was to the case for democracy, you are being for UATX, and I am grateful. Yeah. Back to the war. There are two stated goals for the war, at least, but the two main ones are freeing the hostages, the 130 or so that still remain, many of whom are being kept in conditions we can't even imagine, and defeating Hamas. Everyone I've talked to seems to acknowledge that these are at cross purposes. Which should be the priority of the government of the State of Israel and the army?
It happens so, it doesn't happen often, but it happens so that I agree with Bibi and with the government that the only way really to bring hostages home, those who are alive, is to put Hamas in an impossible situation. And also I have to say, and it was very difficult for me to speak to some of the families. I can quote one without saying the names, my conversation with one of the fathers. It was like months ago, so it was not so obvious as today. He said to me, okay, you gave us, I and my wife, stories how you organize pressure on Americans, that they will organize pressure on Qatar, but let me ask you frankly, how to organize pressure on the Israeli government? And I ask, explain me for what, with what aim? Do you want to press on the Israeli government that they'll agree to release all the criminals, all the terrorists? I think it is possible. But he said, no, we know that Hamas will not accept it. So I said, do you want that Israel will say, okay, Sinwar and his 100 people can leave to Qatar, but 100, all the hostages have to be released? He said, no, we know Hamas will not help. It was months ago. He said, so what you want, where you want to press the Israeli government? He said, I want to press the Israeli government, that the Israeli government will stop the war, will bring back troops to Israel, will accept that Sinwar will be for a few more years the leader. After all, we have weakened him for 70%, for 80%, more than before. But for the release of our hostages, wouldn't it be fair to let him rule for a few months, for years? And they said, I don't think there is a government which will accept it because it puts in danger the existence of the state. And then he said, so you want to say that my son is doomed, he will be killed. And he started crying. And so what I have to say him? To start saying him that, well, I will give it another example because I really don't. Many years ago, Ariel Sharon called me at night. Why? Because tomorrow there will be vote in the government exchanging for 3 dead soldiers of ours who were kidnapped, they are dead, and one drug dealer who went to Lebanon and was arrested. For this, we are going to give 600 terrorists, including 50 with the blood on their hands. And Ariel Sharon called me that as the one who was yourself in prison, I want you to vote with me. And I said exactly as the one who was in prison. And who decided for myself that not for any price, that if it puts in danger our struggle for Jews, I will not pay this price. I don't agree that we can pay this price even for the hostages. So that's what I felt then. Of course, it's much more tragic situation. And no doubt that they're in awful conditions. And to some extent, the government has to feel its responsibility for the fact that they're there. Nevertheless, if we're saying, so let Israel be under the risk of destruction, really what it means that Sinwar will be a few years. First of all, it means that nobody will go to live in the south, that we gave up big part of it. Second, in the conditions of Middle East, if you're so weak that they can rape you and you cannot remove them, you have no chance for survival. So that's why it is very difficult. But yeah, I believe that we have to put Hamas in an impossible situation, that they'll have to choose between their personal death, immediate death, or some kind of deal, because we can pay by many criminal terrorists in prison while we are fighting them anyway, but not risking the existence of the state of Israel. That's what.
Now we're going to end with a lightning round.
Yeah.
Okay, because we all need to know the following answers to the following questions in one word or two. Okay, short. I know it's hard for you. You're Russian. It's hard.
No. Russians never speak short. You read Dostoevsky and understand.
Favorite psalm.
Gam kilech bagay tzalmavet lo yirara ki atem odeh. 23. Psalm 23.
Favorite biblical character.
David. And if you ask the second character, my wife.
What's one thing you miss about Russia or Ukraine?
Snow.
Who was the best American president for Israel?
Well, I believe Reagan, though some Israeli politicians don't like him. But yeah, he was the one who understood that America and Israel stand on the right side of history, and that nothing will have to. Nobody was saying it so clearly, and I read all the things which were behind the scene in the conversation. Nobody was saying so clearly to Soviet Union they are on the wrong side of history, that they will lose whatever.
It's a lightning round.
You are really against my Russian nature.
Worst American president.
Well, I don't want to be personal, but the weaker is the weaker is the president, the worse for Israel. So think who was the big president in the last 20 years, and that's all.
Are you bearish or bullish on America?
I would.
Optimistic or pessimistic about America?
No, I am optimistic about the desire of people to live in freedom, and until now, America showed the best example what people who believe in freedom can do. So I hope they'll continue with this.
Borscht or Kuba?
Huh?
Borscht or Kuba?
Borscht or Kuba?
Yeah.
Well, I miss borscht. I accept Cuba.
Last question.
And well, the worst thing that the worst thing about borscht that we were eating with meat and sour cream together. And now, of course, I know that it's wrong and I don't do it.
One of the things that always strikes me when I'm around you is how optimistic you are.
Yeah.
You know, Israel feels like a very different place. I was last here right before COVID in 2019. But to be honest, even though I opened with a question about how you've changed, you feel exactly the same to me. Where do you get this incredible optimism, even at a time like this?
Well, even in time like this, Israel is the most optimistic society. Look, check simply. Recently, there was another poll checking 100 countries, except from 3 bordering countries in Scandinavia. We are the best. We are the best, but the most optimistic. I think it's at our Jewish nature, because we know that in the end, it can take 1,000 years, but we are winning in the end. And so also, my experience of being in prison and feeling yourself free, and feeling how much better you feel than all those interrogators who are afraid to say a wrong word. So as long as I'm free, as long as we are a free society, we have all the reasons to be optimistic.
Natan Sharansky, thank you so much.